All right, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'll be taking you through IELTS basics, and these are the basics of the IELTS test, especially when it comes to your reading and your writing. Okay, so we'll be discussing sentence formation and paraphrasing. All right, so let's get started with sentence formation. All right, so I think most of us are cognizant of the fact that in every situation you communicate, you need to write a sentence. You need to write a sentence, and with that, we then need a simple sentence, a compound sentence, a complex sentence, or a compound complex sentence. All right, and most of us might be aware of these already. However, I'll be going much deeper into it and how to form these sentences. All right. So let's talk about the first one. That's the simple sentence. So a simple sentence consists of a subject and a predicate. So we have the subject being the actor of the task within the sentence. All right. Now let's go for and look at what a clause is. A clause is actually is the same as a simple sentence. Okay. So it's just the same as a simple sentence, which is part of a compound sentence. A clause is a simple sentence which is part of a compound sentence. So if you have a compound sentence and let's say you connected it with and, okay, those two parts of the sentences are independent clauses on their own. So but we don't call them independent sentences or independent simple sentence. We just call them a clause. All right. So a compound sentence is two or more simple sentences, that's independent clauses that have been joined together by either a coordinating conjunction, a conjunctive adverb, or a colon, a semicolon. Okay, so you can use all these to form a compound sentence. You can use all these to form a compound sentence. And we go much details into that for you to know how to form these sentences and also have complex sentence we discuss going forward. Now, let's look at the type of conjunctions for a compound sentence. Okay, so we have the coordinating conjunction. So these are, we have four. It's a coordinating conjunction, and I use to connect nor, that, o, or that's or, and we have yet and so. So these over here, I think there are seven. These seven coordinating conjunctions can be used to form a compound sentence. All right. So the format that it has is you see a simple sentence, uh, an independent clause will come, a comma, then these coordinating conjunctions, any of them that you are using to join the next independent clause will come. So please ensure that you bring these comma. This comma over here is very important. Okay, independent clause, comma, coordinating conjunction, then the next independent clause will follow. Let's take a look at an example over here. We have they all had their tickets, comma, but they missed the game. So this is an independent clause, that's an independent clause being joined by a coordinating conjunction over here. Okay, I believe most of us are aware of these. However, you might not know that the structure that you have to get a comma here before the coordinating conjunction. Okay, so please take notes of that and be cognizant of it, because when you are doing your writing task and you eliminate these kind of small um, commas, well, you reading the entire sentence might not seem wrong to you, but the examiner who is marking is considering all these aspects, and at the end of the day, it might affect your marks. So just take cognition of it. Now let's look at um, conjunctive adverbs. Okay, so these are adverbs that are used to form compound sentences. Okay, they are not coordinating conjunctions, but they are used to form compound sentences. And these are, we have nonetheless, however, therefore, nevertheless, albeit, that notwithstanding, meanwhile, on the other hand. And I think there are a couple of others also. But these are the ones that if you master, you can use them pretty much easily when it comes to your writing task. Okay, both tax 1 and tax 2, you can use these coordinating conjunctions in there. And looking at how the sentence are formed, you have your independence clause, that's your first sentence. Now you bring a semicolon, a dot and a comma. Okay, if you want to use these coordinating conjunctions to connect two clauses together, this is how you do it. Independent clause, semicolon, conjunctive adverb, a comma, and an independent clause will follow. Okay, so these are two different sentences being connected by these either of these words. And look at the example below. I used to grapple with writing, semicolon. However, comma, it's really clear now. So have you seen how it's used? Okay, this how is used. Your semicolon, your however will come, and then the rest of the sentence or the second independent clause will follow suit. All right, so you can go ahead and play around with these coordinating conjunctions. They are very fancy to use if you are good at it, and it will really improve your score because the examiner knows that you are forming compound sentences. However, you are not only using coordinating conjunctions and for, but that kind of thing. But you can throw in some of these. That one notify the examiner that you know what you are doing and you are doing it right. Okay. All right. So let's proceed to the use of colon. So a colon can be used alone to form a compound sentence. Okay. So when we use a colon is to add reason. If you want to add more reason to what we are saying, if you want to reinstate a point, okay, if you want to explain a point that we have laid out earlier, if you want to emphasize or if you want to give further information, you can use this colon. It's such a great um, tool, or you can say punctuation mark to use when it comes to giving all these things. Okay, and looking at the sentence format, you have your first sentence, that's the first independent clause. A colon comes and an independent clause also follows. Okay, let's look at an example over here. We have her explanations are clear. The colon will come. All that she said were fathomable. So this second sentence over here is just trying to either explain this first sentence or reinstate it or kind of give further information as in like her explanations were clear. On top, what you said is understandable. So it just accentuating the fact that explanations were clear. Okay, so that's basically how to use a colon. Now let's look at one example I took from one of these writing tasks I did, and I think I pretty much used it effectively. So you see young adults, then the semicolon comes. So those between the ages of 18 and 21. So what is this sentence doing? Those between doing, the one I highlighted over here, what is it doing? It's just trying to explain the young adults. Okay, so that's how you use what? Your colon and comma are not fully matured individuals. Okay, hope you are getting the point that I'm trying to make. And one thing about IELTS reading is that they like using these kind of things. They will write this as let's say a first sentence. They'll bring this and they will give further information using these columns. And sometimes it can be confusing because you have first part of the sentence, the colon will come, they'll give a second part, a comma, and they will proceed. Okay, and they will proceed. You know that if you want to read this, you can just decide to forget about all these things over here in the middle over here. It doesn't make sense. And say young adults are considered not fully matured individuals, and it will make sense. Okay, so that's how IELTS do it in their reading. They just try to give so much information that it will lead you astray. Meanwhile, the answer might be hidden in there. They are just trying to frustrate you with so much words to go around with. So just keep in mind whenever you see a column, be sure that extra information might be coming your way, further explanation or emphasis might be coming your way, so that you know, or they might be reinstating that same point in a whole different language or sentence. All right, and it actually means the same. So if you are aware of this, it becomes easier whenever you see them. Okay. Now let's go to the semicolon. So the semicolon is used when you want to talk about ideas that are closely related. Okay, so two ideas and they are related. And looking at the sentence format over here, you have your independent clause, then your semicolon comes, followed by another independent clause. Okay, so let's take this example. We say she went to the clinic. She had her wound dressed. So the point is a clinic is related to wound dressing, right? Because you don't do wound dressing at the grocery store. And you don't definitely go to the clinic to go buy some groceries for yourself. No. Okay, so these are two related sentences, and we can join them, forming what? A compound sentence using just this semicolon. If the ideas are related, you can join them to make a perfect compound sentence. If they are not related, please don't. You can use any other um, form of conjunctive adverb or coordinating conjunctions to join these and still have your compound sentence out of it. But if they are related, be sure you can use this and it will be good to you. Likewise, in IELTS reading, it can be, you can see some of these in there. They will bring the semicolon and they will, they will, they will state another sentence. They are just trying to relate to closely related ideas. Okay, so don't panic whenever you see them. Now you understand them and you know how they works. Therefore, going forward, you can decipher whenever it's used and properly identify your answer in case it's an IELTS reading task. Now, in the writing task, you can also utilize it, and it's pretty much good for you if you want to connect certain um, things. So look at how I use the semicolon within a conclusion paragraph I wrote for certain task. So say in conclusion, okay, the upside to using social media is apparent, and the semicolon comes, and we have ensuring fast and seamless communication with lots of entertainment at our convenience. So this second part, right after this semicolon, is related to the advantages of social media. That's why I had the guts to use this semicolon alone to connect these two parts, because what I'm saying in the second part of the sentence is related to what I meant by within the first part of the sentence. And because it's a conclusion paragraph, I've already discussed these things up there within my body paragraphs already. Okay, and if you have in conclusion and you have this turns into a whole complex sentence because it's a compound sentence, and adding in conclusion to it is what? A subordinating clause. So you cannot say in conclusion. It doesn't mean anything. In conclusion, what does in conclusion done? It just means nothing. So adding it to this kind of a sentence, you have just formed a compound complex like sentence just like that. And I also love to see this. They love to see these kind of things. If you can do it, then you can do it right. Please, if you cannot do it, don't force yourself to doing it and getting it wrong because it's better to write something that you are 100% sure of. For me, I was 100% sure of writing this because I knew, okay, these things are closely related, so I can just connect, and I ended up getting a complex sentence out of it. Okay, so looking at how I use the next part, so you see, this notwithstanding, so I'm just using another coordinating conjunction elsewhere. Okay, the disadvantage of false information and addiction exceeds the benefit, and it's just a conclusive paragraph. All right, so that's how to use a colon, and I believe going forward you can use it if you spot it within any writing, let's say a magazine, or you are reading an article and you find it, you know how it's used, and just pay close attention to how they are using it. And you can also use it that way because they are with these articles that they write online, they mostly go through powerful editing tools before they are being published. Okay, all right, so let's go forward to subordinating conjunctions and complex sentences. Okay, so we have something we call subordinating conjunctions, and these are adverbial conjunctions that give reason, purpose, time, and or place. Okay, so using when, which is subordinating conjunction, we have because, if, upon. There are a couple of others, but these are the most frequent ones that we can use within our write-up, and it will be good to us. Okay, so these conjunctions are used to create subordinating clauses. A subordinating clause is just like the one I said earlier in conclusion. It doesn't actually make sense standing alone. Okay, these are the subordinating clause, and they need a main clause to um, give them the full meaning that they desire. Okay, so looking at the example below, we have because children don't have a mind of their own, they fall prey to advertisement gimmicks. Now, if you take the first part of the sentence, which has been highlighted in red, because children don't have a mind of their own, you see, it doesn't just make sense because they can't stand alone. This is what we call a subordinating clause. It's a clause looking for a main clause to make it full meaning, and having the fall prey to advertising gimmicks makes it complete. And this is what we call a complex sentence. The complex sentence. You see, we don't have and, or, however, all these stuff in there. But because the first sentence, okay, the subordinating clause, it turns this thing into what? A complex sentence. And that's how you form a complex sentence. Get a subordinating clause and support it with the main clause. You are good to go. Please, if you are bringing the subordinating clause first, make sure to bring the comma right after it before you add your main clause. So looking at this example, upon further elucidation, the class became contented. Okay, so you get it. So upon further elucidation, that one alone doesn't make sense. Upon further explanation, like it doesn't make sense. Upon further, it doesn't make sense. Okay, but adding the class became contented, the whole sentence is now making sense. Okay, now if you reorder it, we'll talk about reordering very soon because it's part of how to paraphrase when it comes to your IELTS writing task. Okay, you can write it in another way. You say the class became contented upon further elucidation. That's also a correct sentence. However, look at something over here. You see the comma is not there whenever the main clause is leading. So whenever the main clause is coming, please, we don't need a comma. But when the subordinating clause is the one coming first, you need a comma. Please pay attention to this because it will help you prevent mechanical errors, as in commas and all that you don't bring. They affect um, your score. All right, so let's talk about complex sentences. And with complex sentences, ideally, you don't really need to get a band 7 or more. What you need to do is I'll entreat you to just go online and search for compound complex sentences, how they are formed, and just learn for yourself. However, what you need to get a band 7 are the simple sentences, the compound sentences, and the compound complex sentences using the subordinating clauses and all that. Just master those ones, and trust me, you are good to go. All right, so we'll be finishing up with paraphrasing. And in paraphrasing, we're just expressing the same message in different words. The key word here is what? Same message, same message, same message. Same message means same meaning. So you ensure that the meaning that you are getting out of the other sentence that you have formed, which is the paraphrase version of the original one, has same meaning, same message. Even though they are different words, they are just the same. So we have ways to paraphrase. You can use the passive voice and the active voice. We'll go details into those two. We have sentence ordering, just like what I just did right before coming here, the previous slide. And you have paraphrasing using synonyms and adding modifiers or what qualifies to your sentences. All right, so let's look at the passive and active voice. So an active voice is where the subject of a sentence comes first. And that is how we mostly write sentences, or IELTS will write those kind of active sentences for you, especially in writing tax 1. Okay, they write the active sentences for you, and figuring out how to convert it into a passive sentence makes the difference. You have just paraphrased successfully. Okay, so let's look at this example over here. The several universities charge admissions while trade schools give reduced tuition. That's an active. So several universities. That's the subject of this active sentence. Now, looking at the passive voice is where an object, the object of the sentence. So over here you have the object, which is the trade schools, and the subject is what? Several what? Universities. Okay. So passive voice is where the subject of the sentence comes first, and the object comes first, and the subject goes behind. So the subject will go behind, and it's mostly utilize the word by, which comes right before the subject. And let's take a look at how the sentence over here is turned around into a passive voice. Whilst trade schools give reduced tuition, comma, admissions are charged by several universities. So you see, charged by. So this converts this whole thing from the active to the passive. And please, you see that when we wrote while trade school gave reduced tuition, a comma came. That comma is really important. If you have this kind of wording while you are using the word whilst, please, after the first um, kind of a subordinating, a coordinating clause, make sure to bring your comma, because the first one, whilst, is just coordinating the entire thing. The whilst coordinates the several university child admissions and the trade schools. Okay, so if you have these coordinating words or adverbs that you are using, make sure to bring your comma, and then the other ones will follow. Now let's take an example from a writing task that I paraphrased. Okay, and it goes like, the diagram below shows the existing ground floor plan of a house. and a proposed plan for some building works. Now, look at how I paraphrased. The current plan of the ground floor of a house, together with the proposed changes, have been revealed by the diagram. So you can see certain paraphrases over here. Even though I have converted this whole thing into passive, okay, you have shows, reveal, I mean, those kind of synonymous words that I've utilized in there. And they are also a great tool. We look at it going ahead. So this is just one thing that you can do. You convert it to a passive voice and you have successfully paraphrased your question and you are correct. Okay, utilizing writing tax one will save you a lot of time, especially when it comes to your first sentence. That's the paraphrase of the questions. All right. So I'll give you get more examples when you get to our writing tax, and I'll let you know how this passive voice is used most frequently for basically most of the um, writing tasks that you might get. Okay, so let's proceed to sentence reordering. And I think this is one of the most easiest things that we can ever do. You just take the sentence and you restructure it, and you don't really change much within the sentence. Same wording, however, different arrangements, and same meaning. That's the ultimate goal. We are dealing about meaning. Okay. So when you have sentences that contain is and are, those are the sentences that you mostly might reorder than to use a passive form, because the passive one might be a little bit challenging, even though you can do it passively, but it will take some time and thinking. And writing the exams, time is not on your side, so you are trying to be as quick and as correct as possible. Okay, so you have this example here. So over the air updates are being used to upgrade algorithm of most electric cars. Now, let's look at how the sentence is reordered. Upgrade of most electric vehicles, algorithms, or algorithm. Upgrade of most electric vehicles, algorithm are done using over-the-air updates. So the wording in there that didn't change much, and basically the meaning is the same. However, the structure is different, and that's another form of paraphrasing. Now let's look at the last part of paraphrasing, which is using synonyms and adding modifiers or qualifiers to your write-up. Okay, this is best used in writing tags too. You can utilize them also in writing tags one, because um, if you can write this, if you can get a synonym of a word and the meaning in context is the same, I mean, just go for it and use it. Talking about meaning in context, I mean, don't go and exchange a word for another word which will change the meaning of the sentence. Okay, which will change the meaning of a sentence. I believe you get the point I'm saying. So let me take this example to clarify the point I'm making about context. Let's say you have a situation where we all know that gift. Okay, we have a synonym called present, right? Oh, I'm giving him or her a present on her birthday. All right. Oh, that's a gift, right? However, using that same the word present, if let's say you find yourself in a classroom and um, you are being called upon and you need to report, just want to say present sir, you don't end up saying gift sir, because you think present and gift, because they are spelling are the same, they are synonymous, you saw in the dictionary, so you can interchange them. No, please, that's the point I'm trying to make about context. So make sure that the context that you are using the word first, um, the meaning of the word, and doesn't change the entire meaning of the sentence. The goal is to get same meaning conveyed out, but in a whole different wording. Okay, that's the goal. So let's look at these examples of synonyms and adding modifiers. So please take a look at the first one. The university students should pay all university costs because it benefits an individual rather than the society as a whole. Now, this one is a question from an IELTS paper, tax 2 writing. And they'll ask you, to what extent do you agree or something like that, all right? And you have to paraphrase the question. So this is what I did. I wrote, it is argued that students attending institution of higher education. So you see, students attending institution of higher education is a paraphrase or a synonym of university students, right? Good. Now you say you should pay university cost because it benefits an individual. They should pay all, okay, should pay all the costs associated with it because its outcomes benefit. So you see, it benefit it because the outcome benefit. All right. So I've just add a modifier over here, just like that, and I've modified even though I'm using the same benefit. Okay, I've just modified the benefit over here within my write-up. You see, individual, I use person. Instead of, I use what? Rather than. And you have the society as a whole, the society at large. So this is a nice way of paraphrasing using synonyms and modifiers. Okay, so you modify it and it just looks lively. And that's how, if you want to write a writing task 2, should get you a 7 or above. This is how your paraphrase should look like. Now let's look at the second sentence over here. There's some people believe these days teenagers are spending their leisure time at shopping centers instead of doing organized activities, as sports or music. Now I paraphrase in a whole different thing. I said in recent times. So you see these days has been paraphrased to in recent times. So synonymous words. Now, many individuals argue that the youth, you see, the youth, teenagers, are spending their free time, their leisure time at shopping malls, shopping centers and malls, rather than instead of engaging in physical activity, organized activities such as the sports and enjoying music, enjoying. So I've just add little modifiers and those that are good enough to have specific synonyms, you just place them in there and you are good to go. Okay, so this is how you paraphrase. So if you are getting this video to watch, please pay attention. Note this will help you in your paraphrasing, especially when it comes to the first sentence that you are going to write for your writing task 1 or writing task 2. For task 2, using synonyms and modifiers works. For task 1, using passive voice, a little bit of synonyms, okay, also works best for that. So this is what all about paraphrasing. And if you find that in writing tags IELTS has paraphrased, please be sure that the answer that you are picking to fit into, let's say, a gap from the text will convey meaning that is similar to what you read in the text. Okay, that's what they are looking for. It's all about meaning. The ability to determine that okay, this word when it fitted in here would mean the same is what makes the difference in getting an answer correct or wrong. So thank you very much for watching and see you guys going forward in the other videos. Bye for now.